we manage to share the screen. No, what am I sharing here? It's not. No. No. So do you see probably now, am I sharing the screen?
Yes, we can see Karrabing film.
Good.
Okay.
So you saw the end of my presentation. Let me first thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important event. I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for this grand conversation. Thank you, President Pierpaolo Saporito and OCAM for your work and for the invitation. And my special thanks go to the organizers who very accurately defined the problem. The opportunities never seen before abound. The whole world is connected. The ancient North-South gap can be overcome, and the old paradigm of charity and support can transform into transferring knowledge and competencies. However, during this year in particular, the global crisis reached really an unexpected scope, a pandemic, climate change, this endangering lives of more and more people, social inequalities are rising and increasing, political polarization is being joined by something that we could call information crisis. Dominant commercial internet platforms are turning into a danger for democracy. Internet is dominated by surveillance, advertising, fake news, hate speech, conspiracy theories, and algorithmic allocation of users to content tailored to our expressed tastes and opinions. So we can only find and learn things that we already know. And besides, internet is separating and dividing instead of creating common spaces. So despite the great opportunities the internet has offered to society and individuals, the digital giants have acquired unparalleled economic, political, and cultural power. And this presents a challenge for digital communication as well. The audiovisual language became universal. As you told already, everyone can be a producer, diffuser, and consumer. Billions of movies are uploaded every day on the platforms. But these are mostly commercial internet platforms operated and controlled by the commercial digital giants. So individual creators, if they manage to get their work on these platforms, I will then show you that there are mainly independent, small, marginal platforms that are sharing the most interesting content. But individual creators who are using these platforms support the cultural centrality of the giants. Their creativity enforces the dominant operating procedures and business models. And to actually empower this new creativity that I mentioned and that you mentioned in your introduction, to feed new aspirations of young people for the benefit of democracy, I think that more thorough solutions are needed. And I'm convinced that we need, but we will also find these solutions, because during the COVID crisis, also good things happened. One of them was that a feature film made in Nigeria that have been producing for decades films that were mostly watched by, they were made by Africans, they were watched by Africans because they talked in a particular African way about the everyday problems of people living in Africa. For the first time, the film This Is My Desire was screened for the first time at the Berlin International Film Festival in the official selection competing for the award. You all know that Berlinale is one of the big three European festivals. And all these three festivals, even when they were screening Nigerian films, it only happened in parallel marginal selections. And this was supported by an underlining position that was already defined and criticized in the film that was censored and nobody could see it for years. State You Should Also Die in 1935, directed by Alain Resnais and Chris Marker, two very important film directors, who asked, why is the Black African art located in the ethnographic museum, whereas the Greek or Egyptian art is in the Louvre, which is art museum? And of course, this was repeated in the sphere of cinema as well. Northern films, artworks were considered art, while Southern films were considered ethnographic films, like Southern mean, let's say Nigerian films that I'm talking about. Today, we saw that in 2020, the context changed. The context changed in terms that the film that narrates about two young people living in Lagos, striving to make a living as best as they can, facing obstacles that are very particular, but at the same time, very strikingly universal. They are dealing with daily challenges in a very very innovative way. And this first shot that you have seen here, I showed you before, showing the big wall with the electrical boards that are not taken care of in a way that we expect them to be. Cables are spreading all over. This reminded me of a recent study about science and technology in Africa that says that science and technology in Africa have a particular meaning, and one needs to remember that innovativity has a special meaning because innovativity is part of everyday life in Africa. And you see this in this film, but it's important. This is one part that is very important, that it shows you how creativity can be productive in everyday experiences. But at the same time, something else also changed, namely the producers of this film, even if they said that their film is more ambitious, while Nollywood films are more entertaining oriented, this one has artistic ambitions, but they also avoided comparison. I think this is really important. Comparison with European art films or with Nollywood, claiming instead that the film can compare to Taiwanese New Wave and Indian parallel cinema. These two movements, they still relate to Europeans, like Indian parallel cinema developed a special language inspired by Italian neorealism. But this is the wave of Indian cinema that was talking about real life problems of Indians. And similarly, new Taiwanese cinema was the brightest period in the history of Taiwanese cinema and was using avant-garde approaches to talk about real life problems of the people. So the third thing that I will just mention here is that also the indigenous nations are starting to making films, and one very good, very successful example is Karrabing Film Collective, an intergenerational group of around 30 artists and filmmakers, most of whom are indigenous to the North Territory of Australia, where the word Karrabing has a special meaning, tied out. And this somehow expresses the meaning of the group, of what the group is doing in the terms of cinema. And they combine means of video and cinematic art to narrate stories that are merging dream and reality, with strong environmental engagement. And all these films that I mentioned, they could be found on the existing platform MUBI, called MUBI. But of course, a problem that I think that is the most important in terms of how to empower further these new initiatives in cinematic creativity is how to improve the distribution possibilities, apart from dominating internet platform that I mentioned before. So one initiative just started last week, was launched last week. It is the initiative to make a public service internet. And the other initiative I would like to propose here is that create a public internet on the basis of United Nations Web Television as a more sustainable ecosystem for media innovations, as a true driver of change in the creation of new films and other audiovisual contents, also free from biased values developed historically by European public service media. And with this initiative, I thank you again very much, all Occam people, and in particular, Pier Paolo Saporito, for inviting me, for giving me the opportunity to share my ideas with you. I will stop share